Imagine a multinational corporation with billions of dollars in revenue, a global footprint, and absolute dominance over its market. Now, imagine that this company doesn't actually manufacture the product it sells. In fact, it doesn't even own the recipe. This is the bizarre reality of Red Bull, a giant of modern commerce that operates less like a traditional beverage company and more like an elite, hyper-aggressive marketing agency that just happens to have a liquid asset. This is the story of the Red Bull paradox, an accidental empire built entirely on perception, adrenaline, and a brilliant misunderstanding of what a beverage company is supposed to be. If you walk into a Coca-Cola bottling plant, you will find massive vats of syrup, proprietary machinery, and strict manufacturing protocols. If you walk into Red Bull's headquarters in Fuschel am See, Austria, you will find sleek desks, avant-garde architecture, and rooms filled with media producers, sports agents, and event planners. Red Bull completely outsources its production. The liquid is mixed and canned by a third-party company called Rauch in Austria and Switzerland. Red Bull's core asset isn't industrial machinery or secret ingredient vaults. It is a trademark and an unparalleled understanding of human attention. This setup goes against every traditional rule of business school, where vertical integration and controlling your supply chain are taught as gospel. Yet, Red Bull turned this vulnerability into its ultimate weapon. By freeing themselves from the massive overhead of factories, logistics, and raw ingredient management, they unlocked the freedom to spend an unprecedented percentage of their revenue on something else entirely: storytelling. But to understand how this paradox began, we have to travel back to a time before energy drinks even existed in the West and look at a jet-lagged marketing executive wandering the streets of Bangkok. Stick around until the very end of this video, because we are going to break down the exact counterintuitive lessons this bizarre business model teaches us about modern branding. In 1982, an Austrian marketing director named Dietrich Mateschitz was suffering from severe jet lag after arriving in Thailand. Mateschitz worked for Blendax, a German cosmetics company, and his job was to sell toothpaste to the global market. Exhausted and desperate for a cure to his fatigue, he noticed that local rickshaw drivers, factory workers, and long-haul truckers relied heavily on a cheap, syrupy tonic sold in small brown glass bottles. The drink was called Krating Deng, which literally translates from Thai as red gar, a large, fierce species of wild bovine native to Southeast Asia. Curiosity got the better of Mateschitz. He bought a bottle of the cheap, uncarbonated syrup and drank it. To his amazement, his jet lag completely evaporated within minutes, replaced by a profound surge of mental clarity and physical energy. The magic behind this liquid was a potent blend of caffeine, sugar, B vitamins, and an amino acid called taurine. While Mateschitz saw a miracle cure for international travelers, the drink's creator, Chaleo Uvidya, a self-made Thai billionaire from a humble background, saw it merely as a working-class staple. Mateschitz, possessing the sharp eye of a veteran marketer, realized he was sitting on a gold mine. Mateschitz approached Chaleo with a wild proposition. Let's take this humble blue-collar Thai tonic, modify it slightly for Western palates, and sell it to the rest of the world as a premium product. In 1984, the two men officially formed a partnership. They each invested $500,000 of their savings for a 49% stake in the newly formed company, Red Bull GmbH, with Chaleo's son holding the remaining 2% tie-breaking share. Chaleo would handle the foundational formula back in Thailand, while Mateschitz would take total control over how the world perceived this entirely new category of beverage. Dietrich Mateschitz returned to Austria with a license to sell the drink, but he quickly hit a massive wall of European bureaucracy and public skepticism. It took nearly 3 entire years just to get Red Bull approved for sale by Austrian health authorities. The concept of an energy drink did not exist in Western law. Regulators were deeply suspicious of the unusually high concentration of caffeine and taurine, an amino acid that local urban legends bizarrely claimed was extracted from bull testicles. While Mateschitz fought through the red tape, market research firms delivered even worse news. Early taste tests were an absolute disaster, with consumers describing the sticky, uncarbonated fluid as medicinal, overly sweet, and downright disgusting. Anyone else would have quit or completely changed the formula to taste like a standard fruit punch. But Mateschitz understood a fundamental rule of branding. If you try to please everyone, you end up appealing to no one. Instead of altering the taste to fit existing consumer preferences, he decided to double down on the drink's strangeness. He carbonated the liquid to give it a sharp, crisp bite that separated it from the flat Thai syrup and packaged it in a radical, tiny, 250 milliliter silver and blue aluminum can designed by packaging firm Rauch. It looked less like a refreshing soda and more like a premium scientific fuel. The ultimate stroke of genius, however, was the pricing strategy. In the late 1980s, a standard can of Coca-Cola cost a fraction of $1. Mateschitz deliberately priced Red Bull at a massive premium, nearly 3 times the cost of a regular soft drink. It was a psychological trick. By making it expensive, he created an immediate perception of high value, scarcity, and functional power. When Red Bull finally launched in Austria in 1987, it wasn't marketed as a beverage to quench your thirst. It was positioned as an elite functional efficiency tool for the mind and body. With a product that tasted polarizing and cost a fortune, traditional television and billboard advertising were completely useless. Red Bull didn't have the budget to fight Coca-Cola on supermarket shelves anyway. So, Mateschitz invented an entirely new guerrilla approach to marketing by targeting the people who needed energy the most. Exhausted college students, long-haul night drivers, and club-goers. He hired charismatic university students to drive around in customized Mini Coopers with giant Red Bull cans strapped to the back, giving away free samples at campus parties and beaches. But the real magic happened in the shadows of Europe's booming nightlife scene. Red Bull field marketers executed a brilliantly deceptive psychological trick. They began seeding empty Red Bull cans into the trash cans and recycling bins outside of the trendiest nightclubs, bars, and concert venues in major cities. When partygoers arrived, they saw hundreds of discarded silver and blue cans overflowing from the garbage. This created a powerful, artificial illusion of massive popularity and social proof. The message to the subconscious mind was clear. Everyone who is cool is drinking this. At the exact same time, bartenders discovered that Red Bull masked the depressive effects of alcohol, leading to the explosive rise of the vodka Red Bull cocktail. The drink spread like wildfire through the European underground party scene as a viral phenomenon, completely independent of traditional retail distribution. By the time mainstream grocery stores finally agreed to stock the product, consumers were already hyper-aware of the brand. Red Bull had successfully weaponized scarcity, mystery, and underground culture to build a fanatic consumer base out of thin air, setting the stage for global conquest. As Red Bull expanded across Europe and set its sights on the massive United States market, Dietrich Mateschitz realized that guerrilla marketing and nightclub trends wouldn't be enough to sustain a global empire. He needed a universal language that crossed borders, age groups, and cultures. That language was adrenaline. Traditional soft drink companies spent billions on generic TV commercials featuring pop stars and smiling families. Red Bull did the opposite. They stopped buying advertising entirely and began creating their own content, transforming the company from a beverage brand into a full-scale, bleeding-edge media house. They realized that instead of paying an existing sporting event millions of dollars to hang a corporate banner on a stadium wall, they could just buy the athletes, buy the stadium, and host the entire event themselves. They targeted niche, high-risk extreme sports that television networks ignored: skateboarding, BMX, freestyle motocross, and air racing. By launching events like Red Bull Crashed Ice or Red Bull Rampage, they didn't just sponsor the culture, they became the culture. They captured terrifying, heart-stopping footage of human beings pushing the absolute limits of physical possibility, ensuring that the Red Bull logo was permanently burned into the viewer's retinas during moments of peak emotional intensity. This strategy culminated in the creation of Red Bull Media House, a multi-platform media company that produces feature-length documentaries, magazines, and digital content. When you watch a Red Bull video, you are almost never told to go out and buy a can of soda. The product is practically invisible. Instead, you are sold a lifestyle of courage, freedom, and boundary-pushing human potential. By controlling the entire media pipeline, they found a way to make marketing profitable on its own, turning what is normally a massive business expense into a self-sustaining revenue engine. On October 14, 2012, the world stood completely still. Over 8 million people sat glued to their computer screens, watching a live YouTube broadcast that would shatter internet records forever. On the screen was Felix Baumgartner, a fearless Austrian skydiver encased in a pressurized spacesuit. He was standing on the precipice of a custom stratospheric capsule, dangling a staggering 24 miles above the surface of the Earth. The edge of space was an abyssal black behind him, the fragile blue curve of our planet stretched out beneath his boots. This wasn't a NASA mission funded by taxpayer dollars. This was Red Bull Stratos, a scientific and promotional stunt funded entirely by a marketing firm that sells carbonated sugar water. The tension was agonizing. As Baumgartner stepped off the ledge into the vacuum of space, he entered a terrifying, uncontrolled flat spin, hurtling toward the Earth at a terminal velocity that eventually peaked at an unbelievable 843 miles per hour. He became the first human being to break the sound barrier in a freefall, triggering a literal sonic boom with nothing but his own body. For several harrowing minutes, the entire world held its collective breath, experiencing a raw, unscripted human drama. When his parachute finally deployed safely over the New Mexico desert, the collective sigh of relief was global. The Stratos project cost Red Bull an estimated $50 million to execute, a staggering sum for a single event. To traditional corporate accountants, spending that much money on a 5-minute jump seemed like absolute madness. But the return on investment was astronomical. The event generated billions of dollars in earned media coverage, dominating global news cycles for weeks. More importantly, it permanently elevated Red Bull from a mere energy drink brand to a global symbol of human achievement. They hadn't just bought an advertisement, they had authored a historic moment of human bravery, embedding their logo forever into the annals of space exploration history. Having conquered the edge of space, Red Bull turned its insatiable appetite for adrenaline toward the most expensive, technologically advanced, and prestigious sport on the planet, Formula One. In 2004, the company bought the failing Jaguar racing team for a symbolic $1, promising to invest $400 million over the next 3 years. The traditional racing elite scoffed at the acquisition. To them, F1 was a playground for historic automotive titans like Ferrari, McLaren, and Mercedes. Red Bull was viewed as an arrogant, upstart party brand, a mere fizzy drink company that had no business competing on the grid against serious engineering royalty. The paddock's mockery turned to absolute terror within just a few seasons. Under the brilliant leadership of team principal Christian Horner and the legendary aerodynamic design genius Adrian Newey, Red Bull Racing transformed into a ruthless, dominant dynasty. They didn't just compete, they revolutionized the sport. By pairing cutting-edge aerodynamic science with a hyper-aggressive team culture, they captured 4 consecutive world championships, with driver Sebastian Vettel from 2010 to 2013, and later replicated this historic dominance on an even grander scale with the phenomenal Max Verstappen. Today, Red Bull doesn't just own one F1 team, they own 2, alongside a massive multi-club global soccer empire spanning Salzburg, Leipzig, New York, and Brazil. This sprawling sports portfolio isn't a hobby or a vanity project for eccentric billionaires. It is a highly calculated, immensely profitable closed-loop ecosystem. The sports teams generate hundreds of millions in direct prize money, sponsorships, and broadcasting rights, all while serving as permanent, 200-mile-per-hour billboards for the core product. Red Bull turned the entire sports world into a self-funding marketing vehicle that pays them to exist. To truly understand the genius of the Red Bull paradox, you have to follow the money, because the company's financial structure looks less like a beverage business and more like a high-stakes magic trick. Most traditional companies are weighted down by what economists call heavy assets, massive investments in property, manufacturing machinery, regional warehouses, and sprawling logistics fleets. If Coca-Cola wants to increase its global volume, it must build or partner with massive new physical bottling plants. Red Bull, by contrast, operates on an ultralight asset model. By completely outsourcing the physical mixing and canning to Rauch, Red Bull keeps its corporate footprint incredibly lean, agile, and protected from manufacturing risks. This lean operational structure unlocks a financial superpower that keeps competitors sweating. Because Red Bull doesn't have to sink billions of dollars into maintaining factories or managing complex raw material supply chains, it possesses a jaw-droppingly high profit margin on every single can sold. A massive percentage of the company's total overhead is freed up to be funneled directly back into their true engine, the marketing budget. It is estimated that Red Bull routinely reinvests up to 30% or more of its total annual revenue straight back into marketing and media production. For comparison, most traditional consumer goods giants struggle to allocate even 10% of their revenue to advertising. The result of this financial loop is an absolute cash-generating monster. Red Bull sells billions of cans every single year across more than 170 countries, capturing a dominant share of the global energy drink market. Because they control the intellectual property, the trademark, and the media rights, they have created a business that is virtually impossible to bankrupt. They have decoupled their revenue from the physical constraints of production. In essence, the liquid inside the can serves as a highly profitable liquid currency ticket that funds a global media empire, which in turn inspires people to go out and buy more tickets. The unprecedented financial success of Red Bull did not go unnoticed. Over the decades, a massive army of corporate copycats and rival beverage titans looked at Red Bull's astronomical profit margins and rushed to claim a piece of the energy drink gold rush. Corporate giants launched their own variations, while thousands of independent startups flooded supermarket shelves with neon-colored liquids, promising identical shots of caffeine and taurine. Yet, walk into any convenience store today, and Red Bull still commands the prime eye-level shelf space. The vast majority of those challenger brands didn't just fail, they evaporated into a corporate graveyard of forgotten products. Why couldn't these rivals, many with deeper pockets and superior distribution networks, dethrone the Austrian giant? The answer lies in a fatal misunderstanding of what Red Bull actually is. The copycats believed they were competing in a beverage war. They spent millions engineering better flavors, offering larger cans for lower prices, or tweaking the chemical formulation. But they were playing the wrong game. You cannot defeat Red Bull by changing the liquid, because Red Bull's dominance has absolutely nothing to do with the liquid. They didn't build a product monopoly. They built a psychological monopoly on the feeling of extreme human potential. When a consumer buys a competitor's energy drink, they are buying a soda with a caffeine kick. But when they buy a Red Bull, they are subconsciously buying a tiny carbonated piece of the Formula One podium, the stratospheric space jump, and the rugged spirit of extreme athletes. Red Bull created an emotional armor around its brand that logic cannot pierce. By the time a competitor tries to match their marketing budget, they find themselves decades behind a company that has already deeply embedded itself into the global cultural fabric. Red Bull didn't just survive the copycat onslaught. They used the competition's generic nature to make their own premium identity look even more elite. The story of the Red Bull paradox ultimately forces us to redefine what a modern business actually is. In the traditional 20th century economic mindset, a company's value was defined by its tangible assets, its factories, its proprietary manufacturing processes, and its physical infrastructure. But Red Bull flipped this script entirely, proving that in a hyper-connected, media-saturated world, attention is the ultimate currency. They didn't succeed by perfecting the art of the beverage. They succeeded by mastering the art of human fascination. The liquid inside the can is merely the physical delivery mechanism for a brilliant ongoing story. The true takeaway from the Red Bull empire is that a product is no longer just a physical object you buy off a shelf. It is an identity you choose to wear. By transforming their marketing department into a profitable media powerhouse and their brand into a cultural ecosystem, Dietrich Mateschitz and Chaleo Yovidya built an enterprise that defies traditional business logic. They accidentally invented an energy drink category, but what they intentionally mastered was the psychology of human potential. The next time you see that classic silver and blue can, remember that you aren't looking at the product of a soft drink company. You are looking at a masterclass in modern illusion, a multi-billion-dollar marketing firm that cracked the code of global commerce, all by giving wings to a product that, technically, they don't even make.